BW Education and Business World, welcome to you to this session where we have three stalwarts from the domain of skilling, entrepreneurship, and education. We'll talk about, are the masses ready for digital transformation that has engulfed the education sector? One of the domains impacted positively by COVID is education, where the immersion of technology in education has gone. Today we have a very special panel to discuss this. We have Mr. R. Ramanan, who is the mission director of Atal. He works in the NITI Aayog, and he's made sure that the vision of the Prime Minister to create the self-reliant India happens through creating centers of entrepreneurship in the rural areas and semi-urban areas. Welcome, Mr. Ramanan, to the BW Education Show. We also have Mr. Manish Kumar, who is the CEO of the National Skill Development Council. Welcome, Mr. Manish Kumar. Skilling, especially in this post-COVID world, very important to being relevant. It is about survival. So while the National Skill Development Council was set up about 10 odd years back, I think now is the time when you will see the outcomes that the NSDC is working on and hopefully its applicability. We also have Mr. Vinesh Menon, who is the CEO of the education and skilling business of the Ampersand group. It is a primarily education, skilling, training focused education group. It's about 1,000 crores in turnover. And recently they forayed into working with the government to realize the dream of the public-private partnership to impact the masses in education. They have a very large base of students. So welcome, Mr. Vinesh Menon.
Thank you.
Our panel is completed by an education provider being there. Let me start with Mr. Ramanan. Mr. Ramanan, tell us, how have the last 60 days impacted education, and where do you see it going in the next 3 to 6 months?
Thank you, Anurag, and good morning to everybody who is on this call. I hope everyone is hale and healthy in spite of this very difficult times and unprecedented times that we are experiencing. And all of you are also practicing the COVID-19 safeguards. Anurag, it is indeed a privilege to always participate in your education panel because you bring to surface very, very important questions that all of us have to address. After all, we are a country of 1.3 billion people. We have 1.4 million schools in our country. We have 10,500 engineering and related institutions. We have 39,000 colleges, and we have 150 million young students who are going to be entering into the workplace. And the future of our country of 1.3 billion people is dependent on the direction in which these 150 million young students are going to take us. So the destiny of the country is in their hands. And education is a very important part, because without education, there cannot be the ability to take on new jobs that are going to come during the COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 crisis. And without education, you cannot aspire to become innovators, you cannot aspire to become entrepreneurs, and you cannot aspire to become job creators. And the Atal Innovation Mission was formed by the Prime Minister, as you are all aware, to focus on exactly that. How do you create an ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship that's going to launch thousands of job creators and not just job seekers? Because if you want to carry 1.3 billion people forward, the existing companies are not going to be able to meet the demand, and you need millions of new job creators. And so these Atal Innovation Mission has launched in a very holistic manner. How do you bring the capabilities of innovation and entrepreneurship to the fore at the schools, at the universities, in the industry, in various states, in various districts, and at a national level? And the COVID-19 crisis has very starkly thrown a couple of, of course, there are very important challenges which it has thrown. We have never experienced this sort of lockdown before. We have experienced some emergencies in previous years, but never in the history of mankind has this sort of lockdown for not just a couple of weeks, but for months happened, and we are all locked down at home, and we are all wondering what is next in store for all of us. But at the same time, I was just imagining 10 years ago, if such a situation had happened, we would be in a completely different situation than what we are in. We are still today able to move forward with essential services because of the tremendous advances that technology has made and the impact that technology has had, especially digital transformation. And it is because of this that today we are conversing with a whole lot of people on on your channel as well as on Facebook and other social media, and be able to deliberate on subjects and still keep the economy moving, essential services happening. So the COVID-19 has dramatically shown the impact of digital transformations on every aspect of our life, whether it is supply chain management, whether it is agriculture, whether it is transportation, and so on and so forth. It has had an impact, and it is creating a new world order. And in order to meet this new world order and the new challenges that are out there, education is very important. And it has also shown how important digital connectivity and transformation has been. This has been evident very strongly in Atal Innovation Mission. As you are aware, we have launched more than 5,000 Atal Tinkering Labs across the country so that our young children get familiar with the latest of technologies, digital technologies, whether it is IoT, miniaturized electronics, augmented virtual reality, do-it-yourself kits, cloud services, and so on. And the idea is that our children should be familiar with the latest tools and technologies, using which they acquire a problem-solving, innovative mindset, and using which we become a nation of job creators and job innovators. When these students go to the university, they have world-class incubators where they can foster startups and new opportunities. And when they go into the industry, they're able to carry their entrepreneurial, innovative thinking into boosting the industry's output, economy, and so on. Now, in order for us to be able to, in the last 60 days, keep the things moving, because imagine all the schools are shut and everybody is at home. But what came to our rescue was online digital education. And today we have launched 5 modules, Thinker from Home modules, to the 2.5 million students who are out there and who are accessing it through the internet or through the mobile technologies that is available. We are very fortunate in our country that we have done excellent connectivity to various parts of the country. We have 733 districts, as you're aware. We have 600,000 villages. But the beauty is our adult tinkering labs have been installed in more than 660 districts across the country, whether it is rural, hilly districts, and so on. And the students from all of these places are responding beautifully to these online learning modules that have been launched. We launched 5 modules in the last 60 days. One was on artificial intelligence. We want our young students to become familiar with artificial intelligence, because everything that is happening in the future is going to have an element of IoT, artificial intelligence, and all of that. Second is we launched on game development. We said, how do you make education interesting? Now, everyone plays games. You and I also play game, and the students play game. But what we did was we launched 2 modules, a beginner's module and an more advanced module on how do you create video games? How do you create computer games? So to transition a young student from being just a game player to a game maker. And in that process, you learn a whole lot of other skills, creativity skills, designing skills, storytelling skills, communication skills, algorithmic skills, and at the same time, learning tools, using tools which are accessible on the cloud and on the web. The third module we launched was 3D design using CollabCAD. This is a tool so that you can start doing 3D printing artifacts. Now, every Atal Tinkering Lab has 3D printers. So this was the time for us to make them ready. How do you go about using a 3D printer? How do you design using 3D printers and so on? So these tools are helping them. And the fourth is, along with Adobe, we launched what are known as Digital Creativity and Skills School training program. Now, this we introduce for not only the school children, but also for the teachers and the mentors, because it is important for them to keep abreast of the latest technologies and the latest educational mechanisms that are available. And finally, we have launched challenges leveraging all of this. And the beauty of it is
hackathons to solve real life issues.
Yeah, to solve real life problems. And we said, can you solve any community problem, rural problems that you see in your community, using all of this knowledge? And we launched a challenge, and we have got more than 3,000 responses for this, actual innovations which have been created during this lockdown time. And some of the children have created masks, some of them have created personal protective equipment. Many children have designed sensor technology-based contactless surfaces. So if you come to a home and instead of ringing a bell, it senses that you're there in front of the bell. There is a camera also which senses it, and automatically the bell rings in the house without you having to press the bell. Similarly, for the lifts that we are operating and so on and so forth, it is amazing what the children have come up with. Some of the children have designed contact tracing solutions for hospitals, so that anybody who goes to the hospital is automatically traced. Now, the Prime Minister very very beautifully brought this out in that in the 20 lakh crore package that he said, the 5 pillars on which we are going to build our country back or acquire prominence in the world. The first is leveraging the demographic dividend that he talked about, 65% of our country under 35 years old. But how do we do that? It is through digital education. Not only at a school level, but at the university level, at the industry level, everybody has to launch on digital education as a mechanism of being able to reach across and them acquiring new skills. And it has become affordable. Second pillar, he said, is you need to improve the infrastructure. Unless you set up the infrastructure, and it is not just physical infrastructure that we are talking about, we need to set the digital infrastructure across the country. We have 5G technology which is coming up, which is going to enable massive amounts of transfer of data and so on and so forth. So you have to set up the physical as well as the digital infrastructure, the digital highways for us to
be a hybrid model.
Yeah. The third pillar he talked about was the demand. We have a demand, huge demand. Baiju is a great example of how an unfulfilled demand of tutorials from grade 1 to grade 12 can be met through online materials. The fourth pillar that he talked about was technology. Technology has become available, affordable, accessible, and advanced. So how do you leverage all these technologies for the purposes of digital education, digital assessments, digital certifications, digital tutorials, and so on? And technology can play, Anurag, a great role in creating platforms for livelihood creation. You see, the new world order is going to be personalized education. Supposing I want to become an artist, I want a set of people who can leverage the digital platform to show me how I can become an artist. If I want to become a craftsperson, or if I want to be an ITI plumber, and so on and so forth, digital education can reach across anywhere, and you can actually create livelihoods. You want to become a dancer, a singer, you see how Indian Idol has become popular. You see on the video YouTube sessions where people are having online tutorials for dancing, Bollywood dancing, and so on. So there is a whole lot of new entrepreneurial opportunities that comes by leveraging EdTech, and EdTech startups are going to be in high demand. And finally, our economy can grow only if there is a uniform development across the country. So what we need are community innovation centers where, instead of the urban migration that we are having to 7 tier 1 cities or 8 tier 1 cities, how do we use the 100 smart cities for becoming hubs of job innovation, job creation, entrepreneurship, and also have access to the finest healthcare, telemedicine, education. In all of this, digital education is going to play a very important role. So with that, I stop for now. But I think we are at a watershed moment in our history where a digital revolution in education and many other verticals is going to play an important role in creating a new world order, a new world economy.
Thank you, Mr. Ramanan, for so beautifully and in a relevant way illustrating how the technology will impact education, skilling, jobs in every sector, and sharing what the Atal Innovation Mission and the Atal Tinkering Labs are doing. I would come back to you with 3 specific questions. One, when initially the Atal Innovation Guidelines came, you had a physical space requirement. Will that go away or become irrelevant or lesser? Because a lot of people couldn't apply because of that, whereas they had every other skill. Second is the future of the gig economy. You talked about if you want to learn a new skill, the digital level. And third is, are we furthering the digital divide or we're bridging the digital divide? These are 3 questions. And what can private players do in terms of partnering Atal Innovation Mission in your mission in the Prime Minister? These are the questions. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
At this point, let me bring in Mr. Manish Kumar. Okay. So Manish Kumar, if I had to say, you and Mr. Ramanan are 2 sides of a coin. He is creating entrepreneurship, you're imparting skilling, and hopefully that should both result into helping the economy, making the individual self-reliant and healthy. So your opening comments on, are we ready for this digital transformation, and how do you see it panning out?
Thank you, Dr. Batra. I think the digital skilling and the digital platform as a means of skilling or education is inevitable, and it's not about choice. It's about adapting to the reality of life. I think this whole life-transforming technology that we call internet, having arrived in the world sometimes in 1990s, had changed the way human civilization operates. And I think its most visible and most, strongest presence is felt now when, because of the COVID scenario, we can't meet physically, but none of the ideas of human civilization about talking to each other, about contesting ideas, about, communicating, all of these have been possible because that technology is there as a backbone to us as of now. And I think, therefore, there is a greater realization that not only would this become very important for the future, and we all know that in future, 2 years, 3 years from now, we would be meeting physically too. But the fact that there could be a clampdown at some point because of many reasons, and then you need to adapt your life accordingly. So, and how we have done it now and how we would be doing that in future is something which will occupy our minds in a very big way. So therefore, digital world is there to stay. And I think more and more minds would be putting a lot of effort to make it better and better in future. So talking specific about skilling, few things which occurs immediately is, as we see this whole technology transformation occurring across the world, and you would notice that from 1990s to maybe the last 2-3 decades, the rate at which technology has changed has gone exponential. And therefore, when you try to define a job, it's very difficult to stick to that job. It's not that industry 2.0, when you created a job and that job lasted for 30 years in the same format, and the job description could remain the same. The job description changes, and therefore the skill set that you need to survive in that job changes very rapidly. And in the new world that we are entering, and whose manifestation we see the highest in the current times, I think the need for skilling, reskilling, upskilling as something which you will do lifelong is very, very critical. And therefore, the importance of skill itself as a whole. What we have found when we look at the interest of learners, we have eSkill India platform in which normally the traffic that we would observe pre-COVID, we have seen a 700% increase during the COVID times. Shows the interest of people to keep learning, and the fact that we had created this really resulted in them making the best use of their time. There are more than 468 courses there. 60% of them are free of cost. Many of the courses you can access are from very well-known companies across the world. And therefore, there are lots of things which you can actually learn there, from maybe simple things like mushroom farming to very complex things like blockchain technology. You could learn any of these going there. So therefore, I think having these kind of platforms and making them much more user-friendly is very, very critical. But when we come to, I think, talking about masses, one of the challenges which we feel and which I be concerned about is that we need a quick evaluation of our trainees to understand their profile in terms of being able to access online skilling. And we found almost 35% of them saying that they didn't really have smartphones to access learnings. And then we looked at the income quartiles within which people fall. And we found that the lowest income quartile in India earns 26,000 rupees per month or less. And it's this income quartile which will face a lot of difficulty, because to them, smartphone is a luxury. And therefore, they also have concerns about data. And then further down, if it is very remote part, then there is the issue of connectivity. That are you really connected all the time? So these are challenges which are real, and we must be mindful in our effort to maybe enhance the capacity of digital world to access and change people's life. We should not forget the lowest income quartile and their capability and their ability to access all the materials that we create. So this is a very important challenge on which we need to be prepared. Secondly, we also had webinars with almost 3,000 trainers across India that are engaged in many of the training centers that we have, and many training partners who run training centers. And what we basically talked about digital skilling and their preparedness for that. They all seem to be excited, but there is a need for, I think, a different skill set for doing that, because I think the whole process by which you skill people through digital method will vary from sector to sector. And we have done an analysis to understand which sector is more amenable and which is not. So, for example, if you look at media and entertainment, we find that everything, the theory, the practical, and assessment, all three could actually be done completely online. But that's not the case with capital goods. It's going to be different when you're going to skill people on that. Yeah. So therefore, we have to be mindful that how much are you going to put where. So in some cases, the theory part can be done maybe 60%, 70% by digital platform. The other will still require somebody to come and talk to you about it. So this is, I think, one part of the stuff which I wanted to talk. The second part which I wanted to touch was the connectivity to jobs, because this is very important. We skill people, but after skilling, you need to go and become an entrepreneur, or you need to get a job. I mean, this is what is like an outcome for any skilling program that occurs. So one of the recent initiatives that we have taken is creating what we call a skill management information system. So it's a platform that we have created, taking private sector help, and the idea is that can we connect people who are looking for jobs, even the people who have migrated, looking for jobs, with those who are giving jobs. And we have found, surprisingly, that lots of jobs actually that for which people are approaching us, they're saying that, okay, I actually require 30,000 people quickly. And but there has been migration from that part of India, and therefore they are facing difficulty to run their business. The idea here would be that can we, like Honorable Prime Minister said, localize employment, in the sense that there are artificial intelligence algorithms running behind, which try to connect workers with that skills that is nearest in terms of location. So the idea would be that let's not get somebody to travel from Assam to Bangalore all the way. If there's somebody in Andhra Pradesh who is available, or maybe within Karnataka. So therefore, trying to ensure that things are more local in terms of opportunity, because that's going to make things easier. We are also trying to see if we can go down to clusters, because we realize there are about 100 plus or minus few economic clusters within the country. And if we could focus on cluster-based skilling, then probably we can ensure that the job opportunities as well as the entrepreneurship opportunity will rise in a big way. If we compare to a situation where we are skilling with the country as a whole in mind, and people might be traveling long distances to access the jobs. So these are few changes that we are trying to incorporate, realizing the challenges that COVID threw up, and also the fear that people will have about traveling in the next few years, and being too far away from their home would be a matter of concern for many. So these are few adaptations that we have done. I'll get back to more in course of our discussion.
I just want to ask you two specific questions. Thank you for being so real about what is happening. You talked about the media entertainment sector. I was the chairman, like Subhash Ghai is the chairman in this. I was the chairman of the media and entertainment sector council, and with the then HRD minister, I did getting into skilling in this, and I'm a failed education entrepreneur. I did start a media school, ran it for 5 years, and then my partner, went to heaven, so we shut it down. But I want to ask you two things. One is, there are lots of comments and questions. We have 20 comments and questions already. One of the things is people are asking, so many people have lost jobs. So, they're not saying, the questions are not exactly, but what can they do in reskilling to get some jobs? So that's one real question I would like you to. Second is, how does the role of the sector skill councils change? If, for example, there is a sector skills council for education, how does the role of that sector skill council change? You beautifully talked about which sectors are impacted positively, which sectors are impacted negatively. You gave the example. So these two questions, people who are out of jobs, what can they do? There is a business owner who is saying, I want to train my teams, reskill so that they are relevant for future. What do I do? Then a lot of questions are around that. Mr. Ramanan is talking about AI, but what about basic access to internet? Alita Sharma is asking, what is the bare minimum digital access that is required at remotest of the places so that the children are not deprived of education? Mr. Manish Kumar, Ritu Jain is asking, what are the new job sectors due to COVID-19 in the near future, other than artificial intelligence and related fields? So there are questions which are real. We'll come to that after we've gotten Mr. Menon. Mr. Menon, you're a large education and skilling provider with an all-India footprint. You heard Mr. Ramanan, you heard Mr. Manish Kumar. What are your opening comments on the future of education for masses, and are the masses ready for this digital immersion, if I may call it?
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and Dr. Batra, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm indeed, honored and privileged to be amongst luminaries like Manish ji and Ramanan ji. And I think the direction has been very, very, very well put by both of them. I think there is no doubt that we are in the right direction. I think COVID has been a pretty, while it's been tough on the entire world, I think it has definitely been a perfect period for resetting a lot of the innovation and the initiatives that we want to take to reach out to the masses. Having said that, my concern only remains the last mile connectivity. I think one of the questions on the screen talked about that. If you really break up our entire country into states, so we've got, of course, 29 states and union territories, but if you really get down into the last mile, we're talking about 70,000 villages, and we're talking about trying to reach the last mile out there and providing education and skilling through a digital platform. And that's where there are a few questions that need to be probably looked into. For example, out of the 455 million urban population that we have, nearly 300 of them have internet access. Whereas out of the 900 million non-urban population, I think the internet access has not reached more than 180 million. So that is probably one area that we need to be cognizant of. At the same time, I think the way we are moving forward, we are given to understand that probably 85% of the country would be internet savvy or internet connected by 2024. So I think that way, I think we are moving in the right direction, but are we ready right now? No. Having said that, I'm glad that this has happened in a way, because a lot of people have been talking about technology, but right now I think real action on the ground has started, and that is extremely encouraging. The other quick points I would like to make is, like somebody talked about, someone asked about MOOC courses, and I think both Ramanji and Manish ji were mentioning that there has been an exponential growth in these areas, and that is true, because way back in 2016, not more than 1.5 to 1.6 million were really enrolled with MOOC courses. But today, they've already touched about 5 to 7 million, and it is likely to go into more than 10 million to 11 million in the next couple of years. So I think there is a dramatic growth which is happening in these areas. We are a strong believer in what's happening. We have invested a lot into technology, and our objective is really to try and transform lives globally through this whole knowledge ecosystem that's really coming out. But there are some areas that we probably might want to discuss and delve deeper when it comes to practical execution on the ground.
Fantastic. Vinesh, I want to ask you about the digital divide. As you can see, the questions are 27 questions / comment. One is about how are people in the rural areas, even when we were preparing, you brought up this question, how will rural areas kind of come up to, say, urban centers, semi-urban? My children have access to internet, my children have access to digital devices, they have access to ad tech. What about children in the rural sector, who may not be that privileged? So is technology creating the digital divide, or is it bridging the digital divide? If you can talk about that now.
No, I think I wouldn't want to say that it is dividing. And yes, there is a certain division that is there right now. But I think with every passing day, I think that divide is getting filled up, and it is starting to get bridged. I mean, look at what you see around you. You can see even the economically weaker folks not going around without a phone, and it's not even a normal phone; it's a smartphone. I mean, you can actually now start seeing a rickshaw driver sitting and waiting for a passenger. He's no longer bored. He's actually watching videos and he's watching movies on his phone. So I think from that perspective, I think the thrust has started. Have you been able to manage a reach which is in line with what we want to do right now in terms of digital transformation? Probably not. But I think the rate of growth in the next 2 to 3 years will be far higher than what has happened over the last 5 to 6 years. The other point which I want to talk about, I'm reminded of what Manish spoke about. I think the whole cluster-based approach, which he talked about for skilling, I think that can be pretty much created across all streams. So if in a way, I think I know that there is a scheme called Pradhan Mantri Gramin Digital Program, which I think has been designed to teach basic emailing, how to access the net, how to make digital payments, how to browse. I think these are some basic basic learnings that are required, some things that we folks will never understand, because for us all this is absolutely the it's a left finger that can do this. But for them, this is big stuff. And I think if that is started to be taken very, very seriously, and we start really exponentially growing that side, I think we should be able to reach whatever I think the digital bridging is going to happen sooner than later.
Thank you, Vinesh. Mr. Ramanan, very similar questions coming as they're coming from Mr. Manish Kumar. How do we get skilling in remote areas? How do we get skilling and entrepreneurship training in remote areas, rural areas? That's a big question. About 10, 12 questions addressed, and we'll get some of the viewers to come on screen and ask you that towards the end. But let me ask you, I asked you upfront about the future of the gig economy. How does it impact skilling and education? Will the definition of infrastructure in the Atal Innovation Mission change? If it changes it, how will it impact? What are the post-COVID, what are the dynamic changes that we may say in your policy making, in your definition, in your criteria? So I would like you to address these, Mr. Ramanan.
So there are 5 points which you had raised, 4 points earlier and 1 point additionally now, and I'm going to try to answer that. First, you asked about what is the impact of physical space. Is digital education going to replace physical space? And the answer clearly is no. There is digital education required for us to be able to do online training, online materials, video sessions, and so on and so forth. But you still cannot take away the need for physical space, whether it is a physics lab, a chemistry lab, a biology lab, or a tinkering lab. Because these are places where you actually see your learnings translate into real products, real innovations, and so on. So you're going to create a blended learning approach where digital is going to be maybe 70% or even 75%, but you will need that 25% access to physical infrastructure in order to complete this whole education stuff. The second point that I want to share is, what is going to be the role of corporates? I mean, corporates are going to play a very important role in this entire digital education. Why? Because first, they themselves will have to adopt it for their own staff. You are going to constantly want to have latest of tools, technology, knowledge. With the world changing so much in technology, you're going to have that. And how are you going to transmit all these skills? A company like the Tata Group or the Birla Group and so on, they need to introduce digital education on a mass way, encourage, further graduation from universities and so on. Already Georgia Tech, Harvard Business School, they've all launched online programs. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised to see that there is an online entrepreneurship program that has been launched in Harvard Business School by Tarun Khanna on entrepreneurship. And he sent me a mail to that saying, everybody from India can log on free to it. It is a 6-week entrepreneurship program. At the end of it, if the certification is required, there is a payment for that, which is the fees and by which the programs are funded. So you're going to have corporates to play a very important role in digital education. Already Atal Innovation Mission has more than 50 corporate partners supporting us on our Atal Tinkering Lab initiatives, right? The third part that you mentioned was the digital divide. And I want to come to this. The problem is not of internet access today in almost any district. You can have internet access. The problem are, do you have enough smartphones? Do you have cost affordable laptops? How do you ensure that every student is able to access the internet? And I think this is where EdTech organizations are going to play a very big role in innovation. How do I create an affordable laptop which can be given to every student of every class? I mean, today, instead of books, you have to give them a laptop. You have to give them a digital device through which they are able to access all their materials. Why do you need physical books? So how do you ensure an affordable laptop? Second is, you're going to see massive influx of 5G technologies, which is going to enable distance learning and make high quality access to tutorials, to learnings, to interactive sessions, to collaborations, and so on. Third is, you're going to see augmented virtual reality, which is going to play a very important role, because where you have a lack of physical labs, where you have a lack of actual infrastructure, you are able to leverage augmented virtual reality and actually see a 3D picture of a human body. You want to study the brain, you want to study the stomach, you want to study the circulation system. Everything is going to be through an augmented virtual reality. Is going to play a very important role. The fourth is, you have to use satellite technology. You'll see satellite technologies coming. I mean, what is now available to everybody? what is available to everybody is a TV. Even in the poorest of house, there is one TV. How do you use the television as a digital interactive medium through set-top boxes? You connect through a cheap set-top box. You leverage satellite technology, which is accessible everywhere, and you should have innovations coming. So I am very sure in the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to see a massive influx of innovation technologies, hardware technologies, and software technologies, which is going to play a big role in digital education and digital transformation. And the question you talked about artificial intelligence and job creation, how are we going to ensure, is artificial intelligence going to take away jobs, or is it going to create more jobs? From my point of view, actually, it's going to create more jobs.
What are the new skills where jobs will get created? And Manish will possibly address that.
So the 21st century skills are going to be very different. You're going to, for example, you will have to know a whole lot of digital skills, whether it is the word processor, whether it is the Excel spreadsheet, whether it is, if you are giving support, tech support is going to become a new skill that is going to be required, because a lot of people will be providing tech support, whether it is call support, IVR support, and so on. Back office systems which will enable a video conferencing to run. You need to acquire those skills. How do you configure a video conference connecting 10 people? That's a new skill that has to be developed. A new skill that will be developed is 3D printing. How are you going to use 3D printing for the MSME industry? Every MSME has a great golden opportunity of becoming a local manufacturer of component, and we need component technology. We are importing big time electronics and other equipment, which is not necessary. It can all be made in India, and 3D printing can revolutionize that. Another thing which is going to be of massive importance is communication skills. Marketing, digital marketing skills have to be there by everybody, because you're going to market your product, your service to the rest of the world through the digital medium. Why restrict it to your village or your city? Why not reach across to the world for your product, for your service? If you're in a tribal district, you have a tribal handicraft, it can reach to the other end of the world using digital marketing and digital communication. You're going to have you'll need very fundamental skills related to e-commerce. You should know how to operate your own ERP system. The Kirana store will need to know how to operate his inventory management using technology, and then how do you connect to the supply chain management, and how do you do digital payments, and how do you do digitally enabled service delivery? Look at, if I have an integrated ERP, supply chain management, and a payment system for a Kirana store, which is a cloud-based service. These skills have to be learned by the Kirana store people. The guy who's delivering should know how to use my mobile technology to be able to say what is the next delivery stop, or where is the next pickup stop that I have to have. You need to be familiar with all the usage of technology as much as the ability to create those technologies. So you take every vertical, Anurag. You take telemedicine. If you're going to enable telemedicine, all the nurses will need to know how to use telemedicine and how to communicate using all the technologies, the x-rays, the readings, and so on, to a medical hub where they can get advice. And the doctors will need to know how to use all that system. I know they can't say to the secretary that use it, and that person also doesn't know how to use it. So you will need people at various levels to acquire many skills, and these are the 21st century skills which will be required. So you're going to create, and you need data scientists, for example, to analyze data and take decision support system. So mathematics. I personally feel that every field that we were talking about and neglecting in India, we were all concentrating on IT. But if you want sensor technologies to get integrated in civil engineering and medical engineering and transportation, in agriculture, in biotech, all of this is required. And if you don't acquire these skills, you will be out. So these skills will become very relevant, and they will actually help close the digital divide rather than increase the digital divide.
In fact, I have a question from Puneet Wazir. Is there an e-certificate for this webinar? So I think e-certification, the credits would count. And this is one of the questions is, will the credit system will change? What is the weightage for marks when you do an online course versus offline course? The UGC chairman talked that we currently take 20% this online weightage that is likely to go up substantially. So those are things, and I want to bring some real questions. Of course, there are some parents who are saying about we want our children to spend less time on the screen. They're spending more time. There is a question from Shweta Singh. What is the per capita expense expected for accessing digital courses? There is a cost of hardware and software. Are we not privileging the privileged? So she's clearly saying that the digital divide is being enhanced. So there are questions like that, Mr. Manish Kumar. What are the skills that are needed, which will be more in demand? What can employers and employees do to reskill their people? That's the gist of a lot of questions.
So
and there is a question from Mega P specifically for you. As per the sector amenability assessments conducting, what has been the learning about skilling in the healthcare sector? Home healthcare, home nursing is a sector likely to boom, with most people employed in the lowest income quartile you mentioned, which is 12,000 to 24,000. What are the options for mass skilling and employment in this sector? Ritujan, if online teaching will continue, what is your opinion on personality development of the student? The students are workforce of tomorrow. So basically, how do they learn their life skills through screen-based training? There are 48 questions. I possibly cannot take all, but giving you a slice of all of them.
Okay. So I think when we look at skilling and how things will change, one thing which becomes clear is the fact that there will be more automation after this. Within the industry, there's going to be more automation. We should be prepared for that. But that doesn't mean that jobs will vanish. Actually, new types of jobs will emerge. So I'll give you two examples, which comes to my mind. One is a recent discussion I had with Satya from Career Launchers. And he was talking about courses that he has developed, which is focused on data inputs that is sound-based. So what he's saying essentially is that a lot of internet that we operate through web browsers, in future, you would be talking, like you talk to Alexa at the moment. But this Alexa is like, I say, infancy of how you are going to manage internet through audio is going to be far much more sophisticated than that. And therefore, the whole new business and new jobs that's going to emerge is going to be in that direction. So new ways in which, the people who are going to benefit the most apparently are three language speakers. So English, obviously, because that's spoken by many, and so does Alexa. But second is Hindi and Tamil, because that's where demand seems to be highest, apparently. And therefore, these are two languages where probably the voice samples and then voice, let's say, packets speaking the same word through different voices, and creating that artificial intelligence. Yes, the phonetics as a backbone, so that when somebody speaks, then he's able to capture that, this is what is being asked. So there's a lot of work which is happening on it. Apparently in India, it's already taken off in some places, but still in infancy. But that's the future, And second example I remember is about these driverless cars in California, which are driven by girls sitting in Bhubaneswar and 24 Parganas in West Bengal. Essentially, we think a driver might have lost jobs in California, but the data inputs that actually drives the driverless cars is actually made by these girls, sitting there looking at a picture of some street in California, tagging them in terms of what's the speed limit, where is the curve, where is the median of the road, and then sending it back to the cloud. And then someday some car passes there and it's actually converting her intelligence into machine intelligence. So that's how the world is changing. So it's the interconnectedness, new type of jobs emerging. The girls who are just class 12 pass, who never thought that from the outskirts of Bhubaneswar they would ever come to Bhubaneswar to actually do a work, they are very happy about the income that they get. So I do feel that there will be new types of jobs emerging. For the immediate, there would be jobs that will emerge in things like healthcare for immediately, because of the needs for telemedicine, the fact that people are thinking that once you deliver a diagnostic, then how do you deliver medicine? So there would be need for drones. People are talking about using drones to supply medicines. So there are all kind of thought processes. Human beings are creative, and therefore new kind of jobs will emerge as we plan our way into this. So I foresee changes in the jobs as we go forward, and more opportunity than less opportunity. There will be more opportunity, but I think a few things we have to be careful. And some of the things we know that, for example, robotics, artificial intelligence, blockchain. There are about 40 skills that we have identified from the IT world that will cross-cut all sectors, and therefore we have created a portal within NASSCOM that is actually done by NASCOM and ITS Sector Skill Council, financed by NITI, and I think supported by some of the best in the world in terms of knowledge. But that actually provides you cross-cutting IT-based knowledge that could be applied to different sectors. So that's, I think, one aspect of it. But I think coming back to a few other things, one, I feel that we have to become a little more, we need to separate ourselves, because some questions are about people who are, from the low income bracket. And our skilling and our entire planning for skilling is very productivity centric. It has to become more human centric. And these are not things which compete with each other. There are areas where they collaborate. But it's important to think not just in terms of pure productivity increase. And we have found that in our cases, where we have skilled people get wages which is 15% higher than somebody unskilled and getting the same job. This is analytics we have done. If they get, usually we have found that unskilled person get 8,000 rupees per month. These people get about 9,000 plus per month. So essentially 15% differential, which implies that if he's giving 1,000 extra, if you apply a simple game theory, then probably he's making 2,000 extra. That's why he's willing to share at least 50% with the employee that he has hired. So I see the potential of labor, I think, out there. Going to future, I think in the new jobs, I think we were talking on human-centric productivity, human-centric versus productivity. I'll just get into the human-centric part because I consider this very, very close to my heart. On the human-centric part, I think it's very important to begin thinking that can we link skilling that are human-centric with entrepreneurship opportunity. So you create skills, but create entrepreneurial opportunity. And I'm talking of not big entrepreneur, I'm talking of nano entrepreneur. People who are 75,000 rupee to 1 lakh rupee kind of loans that they need, which the banks are not willing to give them. But they would be in villages, they will be in rural India, and they are the ones who will form the backbone of India's economy if we let them be within their local area. Otherwise, many of them actually go to the urban area and distort the labor market. So effectively what happens, they're willing to come very, very cheap. So you'll find private sector actually engaging labor at a very, very cheap cost. And that happens because of this migration. If we can stop that by creating entrepreneurial opportunity in rural India and ensuring that labor market in the urban becomes more fair to the labor and gives them the right wages which they deserve. So at the moment, I actually often get a request from companies saying that they're willing to give joining bonus if they were laborers willing to join them at this point of time. And I've heard about joining bonus in white collar, never heard about it in blue collar. So that shows, the demand which is existing when labor can actually, manage themselves better. So good opportunity for us. I mean, I can see the negative side of COVID, but if we can actually manage our labor in a very positive way, then this is good opportunity for labor in a big way. So this human-centric approach, therefore, I wanted to touch on that before I conclude. Thanks.
Thank you, Manish. Vinesh, you heard them. You addressed some real queries that are coming. Now, possibly the government cannot do the job of Prime Minister's vision of skilling everyone, kaushal vikas, of making everyone, self-reliant in terms of entrepreneurship. It possibly has to happen through a PPP model, a public-private partnership model, more than ever, where there is a role for 5 private players because they have the capability, the capacity, and now technology enables them to do it at possibly lower cost. So tell us, how will you see this relationship between you're a private player and say between National Skill Development Council or the Atal Innovation Mission going up? Give us the roadmap in the next 3 to 6 months. How do you look at it?
So you raise a very important point, Anurag, and that is the role of private sector in enabling all of this and making it happen. And this is something that I have to share. The COVID-19 crisis has, like no other time, brought private sector, government, academia, and industry together, and industrial institutions. In this COVID-19 crisis, for example, I am coordinating along with the help of DBT, DST, MITI, NASCOM, CII. We launched a search for COVID-19 solutions from the industry as well as from the startups. And what was amazing was that the industry came right to the fore in wanting to support the startup industry in addressing solutions and providing them manufacturing support, funding support, financial support, access to their labs, access to their personnel, whatever way they could support, they came. And for me, this is one of those very few instances, and I can only remember Y2K in this context. During the Y2K time, suddenly the world became aware of Indian IT capabilities. And then the world came to India and the IT industry grew like no other industry. And we have a $180 billion ITS industry. Similarly, this COVID-19 crisis has brought the ability and the need to support startups, innovation, entrepreneurship in a very big way by the corporates. And it has awakened the corporate world that, this is going to be the way for us. We need more innovations to address the challenges, not only in the current COVID world, but in the post-COVID world. And with a 30,000 startup nation that we talk about, unless we support them and we encourage this, it's not going to happen. So, what we have done in Atal Innovation Mission is actually in every one of our initiatives, we have corporates partnering with us actively. They can adopt tinkering labs, they can adopt startups, they can co-invest, they can decide to, venture capitalists are exposed to what they are doing. And therefore, there is a very strong connection between industry, government and the corporates. And this has to happen in the education field. Because at the end of the day, the corporates are the beneficiaries of high quality education. And they are going to be the people who are going to drive further productivity. And one more point I wanted to share with you, because I forgot to mention that, in terms of the rural, how do you ensure that the digital divide gets bridged? That is where the NGOs and the corporates are going to play a very important role. Because we are, for example, Atal Innovation Mission is setting up 150 community innovation centers in Tier 2, Tier 3 and rural India. Why? Because the benefits of innovation have to reach the masses.
That's the whole idea of the Atal Innovation Mission, going to semi-urban, rural areas, that the grassroots innovation needs to come.
Yeah, and in this, what we created a policy was that we will give 2.5 crores, but there has to be a corporate or a third-party entity which is also investing 2.5 crores. And we thought, this is not going to have many takers. And suddenly we found more than 2,500 applications where corporates have said, we will match the fund. If you give 2.5 crores, we will match the fund. And now we have selected 25 to start off with. We want to make them operationally perfect. And then we want to scale it up to 150, 200. Why? Because we have 30, 40, 39 states and union territories. Each of them should have at least 5 community innovation centers at a minimum, which can become the hubs and through which the rest of the communities in that district can have the benefit. So I think corporates, and we also want to flip this whole thing. We always talk about public-private sector partnership. Why not start talking about private-public sector partnership? It's just a very simple change of the positioning, but it means that the private has to proactively look at public sector and government initiatives and see how they can support them, rather than say that we are waiting for you to come to us. I think this is a mindset change that is required and a paradigm shift, and I hope this COVID-19 brings that to the fore.
Vinesh, Mr. Ramanan talked about this mindset where the private sector needs to take a more proactive driver's role in at least starting or engineering the relationship. Give us how you, as a private player, are looking to collaborate with, say, NSBC or with Mr. Ramanan's Atal Innovation Mission. Give us some realistic inputs.
So I couldn't have agreed with Mr. Ramanan more. In fact, the last line is music to my ears, because that's exactly what we'd like to do. In fact, we have been around for the last 14 years, and to a large extent, we have been running private schools. And the learning and the entire experience that we have got is now what we're trying to take to the government. And we'll be very, very happy to approach the government to try and participate in a private-public partnership, just like Mr. Ramanan says. Now, there are a few things that we're already doing. So case in point, we're talking to quite a few governments right now to, this whole online, I'm talking about schools now, this whole online teaching into classrooms to make up for students not getting the learning is happening in private schools, but not as much in government schools. And we are talking to quite a few governments to really bring in that change through our technology platform. We are also, and I don't want to name the state, but close to 1,000 Balwadis or pre-primary centers are being addressed by us. We are actually in association with the government to try and manage these balwadis. And right now we're going through they're shut down now to be reopened in June. And there's actually conversations happening with the government as to how we can really get this whole thing going in a non-physical world, because we're talking about dealing with 3-year-old and 4-year-old children. And that's a very different ecosystem as compared to the larger kids. So these conversations are certainly going. I think I would be very keen to approach Ramanan ji and ATL and of course Atal Innovation Mission to see how we can jointly try and replicate what we are doing at private schools and really go into the hinterland of India together and start to make a difference in those schools. And I'm not talking about necessarily setting up hardware out there. It could even be setting up, like you said, tinkering labs on the cloud and try to get those children to really align to that innovation that he's been wanting to do. So we could go there together and try and make the difference, because we know schools pretty well. And overall, I think our take is as follows. The government has got the infrastructure, the government has got the money, the government has got the digital infrastructure in place. I think they're very, very serious about trying to create the ecosystem. What we can bring to the table is execution prowess. We can bring to the table a certain ability to do and to track what is getting done. And this tracking can all the way go right up to the government, so that eventually the need or the outcome that the government is expecting, let them put that onto the private players and actually, commercially take care of us purely basis on performance. So we are ready to get into that kind of a model where it is purely performance driven. And that is what I would like to take to the government. To Manish ji, I would like to try and seek his help to see how we can enhance the whole skilling in schools, because somewhere we get we have to cast them young, and while there is skilling in schools which is starting from 9th standard, in fact it is going down to 6th standard now. But I think some of the areas that we can probably participate together is to try and bring in a technology based skilling, because currently it is very, very lab centric and it is physical teacher centric. So probably technology can be brought in there to try and enhance that. My one-liner request to the government would be, while I think the ability to look forward, the need is being identified right, I think the thought process is in the right direction. But somewhere I think there has to be much more collaboration. And Manish ji, Ramanan ji, forgive me for saying this. I mean, I don't mean any disrespect, but I think if the government's various agencies can start talking to each other a little more. You see, we've got WCD, which takes care of pre-primary children, but not in the education space. We have MHRD, who takes care of education for the pre-primary children. And then we've got NITI Aayog, of course, which is there. We've got NSDC, we've got AICTE, we've got PSSCIV, who makes content. We've got Atal Innovation Mission, who's got content in the robotics and other areas. But we also have CBC trying to do the same thing separately in silos. So is there a way that this can be probably more integrated, collaborated, and then we can step in as a private player to try and see how we can take this forward into execution? It's just a thought I just want to leave. I know sitting here it's very easy to say this, and it probably is very, very complex if you go to the other side of the table. But I just thought I'll take the opportunity to address this wish list.
Thank you so much. I think we have like 61 questions. All of them are relevant. I'd like to get all questions. We don't have the time. I'd like closing comments from both of you. Mr. Ramanan, in the next 12 months, how do you see the sector changing? And Mr. Manish Kumar, I would request you give us a sense of numbers. Just before we started, you gave me a sense of the percentage increase. So give our viewers and our readers a sense of the quantum leap that has happened in 60 days, and hence extrapolate it over the next 12 to 18 months. And especially the new education policy, which was coming out. How do you see all this that we've discussed today being factored into that? So your closing comments, and Mr. Menon, same for you, and then we can wrap up.
So what I would say is, Anurag, that the COVID-19 crisis especially is going to accelerate in a very big way, and it's going to catalyze digital transformation in education. And digital education is going to permeate every aspect of education, whether it be in schools, universities, industry, or NGOs or whatever. Okay. The second thing that I believe is going to happen is you are going to have digital education with a complete focus on job enablement and entrepreneurship and innovation happening, because those are the skills needed for the day. the 21st century skills, which is going to stimulate livelihood creation, entrepreneurship on a mass level. We are going to go into a creator economy rather than just a production economy or a manufacturing economy or a financially driven economy. It's going to be a creator economy where you're going to be able, personalized creation of jobs is going to be possible. Personalized creation of livelihoods is going to be possible because of the permeation of digital medium, and digital education is going to play a very important role. And finally, I think in the next 12 months, you're going to see, there is no better time than for education tech startups to seize this moment and see how you can transform the educational sector to have a combination of blended learning as well as online learning, because that is going to be important if you really want great innovators and job creators to come out in the future.
Thank you so much. Mr. Manish Kumar?
Yeah, talking of numbers, I think if you look at the number of people in average we skill per month in NSTC is averaging about 3.5 lakhs per month approximately. And during that time, you would get about 20,000 people into the website, eSkill India platform that we had. Now we have about 1.5. So therefore, quantum jump in that sense. I think more importantly, if you look at the challenge that we have, is much more. So we have the RPL, Recognition of Prior Learning Challenge, which is what we can address by private sector. It runs into crores. It'll be about, in India, if you want to, people who are already skilled but not recognized for their prior learning, if you want to raise them out, it'll be almost 30 crore approximately, spread across many sectors.
It's a very big number.
And therefore, this can be accessed only through the private sector.
A very upward trend. So it's just an indicative of a bigger number following.
And this requires the private sector's involvement in a very deep way because they're already working. So therefore, government has actually created the facility for the private sector to take the lead on that and then recognize for prior learning through the supervisors, and certify those workers already there. So there are a lot of private sectors are doing it, but it needs to be massed up in a much bigger scale than what is today. And then in addition, we have almost 1 crore joining the workforce every year. So therefore, these are youngsters who join the workforce every year.
Or possibly digitally savvy,
much more savvy,
digitally enabled.
Yes, yeah. So that's the challenge. So I think we need to scale up. Even the 3.5 that we achieve is entirely because of private sector centers that we have established. There would be another 3.5 through government institution every year, every month at the moment. So in some sense, I think we require more of private sector coming in to support on the skilling agenda.
I want to say to all the viewers and all people logged on the webinar, to all the 62 people who asked the questions, that please mail us your questions at priya.saraf@businessworld.in or upasna@businessworld.in. These are two BW colleagues on the BW education side, or you can drop it to me on anurag.batra@businessworld.in, and we'll try and get all your questions answered and addressed because it's not possible to take all the 62 questions. I've tried to kind of condense them and ask them. Mr. Vinesh Menon, your final word before we go.
So it's quite funny because much before the COVID hit us, a lot of us have been part of many seminars. I won't call them webinars because those days they were physical seminars, and most of them were education-related seminars. And I don't think any seminar would have gone past without discussing technology or technology-related disruption. But it really required a COVID to come and actually make this get into an exponential walking the talk kind of a scenario. And I think I'm quite thrilled about that. Our group has been investing. We've been seeing this quite ahead in advance, and we have started investing heavily into technology. I'm absolutely excited about joining hands with the government, trying to really reach out to the government to see how we can work on trying to transform lives for the masses. I think one area that I think we need to focus upon is to catch them young. So a lot of work to be done inside the schools, especially the rural schools and the schools which are there in the hinterland of India. And if you ask me, I would like a scenario where we have a good combination of artificial intelligence and the right pedagogical approach to be able to teach the children, and at some point even realize, use artificial intelligence to find out that in a class of 40, Who is it that we need to really work on to move into a certain skilling area? Who is it that needs to be worked on to move into IIT? Who is it that needs to be worked on to get into, let's say, coding, and start intervening right in the beginning and navigate their path through this joint effort between government, private, and of course with the technology, overarching this entire process. So I'm excited, and I really look forward to exciting times.
Thank you. On this positive note, you heard Mr. R. Ramanan giving you inputs on how the Atal Innovation Mission was relevant before COVID, what it has done in the last 60 days, and how does he see the road ahead. You heard Mr. Manish Kumar talking about new sectors or the new skills that will be important and relevant in the post-COVID era. He also talked about the numbers, and that give you a sense of what is there in future. You heard Mr. Vinesh Menon talking about how the private sector can make sure that the rural opportunity and the rural responsibility is fulfilled, and how public and private partnership will really deliver the numbers that the Prime Minister wants to deliver. So keep reading bweducation.com, businessworld.in. Stay tuned for our webinar. I'd like to thank Mr. Manish Kumar, Mr. Ramanan, and Mr. Vinesh Menon for being so real on the show and giving their insights. And we've not been able to take questions. 64 questions and comments shows the kind of importance this sector has, and the two gentlemen who represent the government or the semi-government bodies have, and the impact they have, and the quality of discussion. 62 questions is a lot of it. Thank you, Mr. Menon, for being part of it. You complete the kind of stakeholders that will collaborate to deliver what you have set out to. So we wish you luck, and we'll see you another time. Stay happy, stay blessed. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank
you
you
so much.
Manish ji. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Batra.
you. Thank you.
Everybody.